Ethiopia, identity is a crime. From Ethiopia Insight, July 19, 2025. A former federal prosecutor on how Abiy Ahmed's regime turned ethnicity into a weapon of state repression. Once hailed as a reformer and peacemaker, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed now presides over a country where ethnic identity has become grounds for suspicion, arrest, and violence. In the shadow of the international spotlight, two of Ethiopia's historic communities, the Tigrayans and the Amharas, are facing what many now describe as targeted state persecution. Under the guise of national security and unity, the Abiy regime has turned the machinery of the state against its own citizens, criminalizing their heritage, erasing their rights, and waging silent wars within its borders. The suffering of other ethnic groups across Ethiopia is real and undeniable. Yet amid this broader crisis, a particularly disturbing pattern stands out. The systematic and sustained repression of the Amhara and Tigray peoples, pointing not to isolated incidents but to a deliberate state policy. Tigrayans and Amharas, both Semitic-speaking groups rooted in Ethiopia's north, share historical legacies and cultural ties. Their contributions to Ethiopia's independence, cohesion, and cultural identity are immense. But rather than receiving recognition, they are now being vilified, marginalized, and targeted. In today's Ethiopia, your ethnicity can determine whether you are safe or suspect. It is becoming increasingly clear that Abiy's regime has embraced Oromama, an ethno-nationalist ideology that elevates Oromo identity as the foundation of state power. In this framework, Amharas and Tigrayans are no longer seen as equal citizens but as political obstacles to be neutralized. Abiy Ahmed is executing a classic divide-and-rule approach, strategically separating Amhara and Tigray to ensure that no united front emerges in northern Ethiopia, aware that their unity could threaten his grip on power. And as a promise of unity has devolved into structural exclusion. Government policies have shifted toward using both overt violence and administrative repression to weaken the political and demographic strength of northern groups. The state no longer merely fails to protect the peoples of Amhara and Tigray, it targets them. Capital crackdown. Nowhere is this persecution more visible than in the capital, Addis Ababa. Since 2020, mass arrests of Tigrayan and Amhara civilians have become common. Thousands have been detained without charge, picked up from cafes, markets, or workplaces based on their name, language, or ID card. In August 2023, reports emerged of Amhara artists, teachers, and entrepreneurs arrested en masse. Some had their assets frozen, businesses shut down, or homes seized. During the Tigray War, similar campaigns were carried out against Tigrayans, with civilians herded into makeshift detention centers and denied even basic legal rights. Many families still don't know where their loved ones are being held. Legal representation is rare, torture is reported frequently, and prison conditions are appalling. These are not isolated incidents, they are part of a pattern. A June 2025 report by Human Rights First highlights a renewed wave of persecution and arbitrary detention targeting Tigrayan youths in Addis Ababa, many of them among the more than 56,000 who fled Tigray this year amid deepening political instability and economic despair. As a former federal prosecutor, I saw this firsthand. Visiting detention centers, I was shocked to find that the majority of detainees were young Tigrayan and Amhara men, imprisoned not for what they had done, but for who they were. These experiences left no doubt in my mind. The regime is engaged in ethnic persecution on a scale that constitutes a serious breach of international law. Systemic erasure. Mass arrests are just one facet. Across Ethiopia, Tigrayans and Amharas are being systematically excluded from public life. Following the Tigray War, countless Tigrayans were removed from civil service positions and state institutions. Many were banned from traveling, harassed in their workplaces, and told not to speak their language in public. Their very identity had become a liability. During a private diplomatic briefing, senior UN envoy Pekka Haavisto reported a chilling conversation with Abiy's ministers, who said they planned to wipe out the Tigrayans for 100 years. It was not just rhetoric. Investigations by United States-based New Lines Institute found evidence of acts constituting the crime of genocide committed by Ethiopian forces, including mass starvation as a weapon of war, systematic rape, torture, and murder of civilians. Tigray was cut off from telecommunications, electricity, and even humanitarian aid for months. This was not the result of war, it was a method of war. The Amhara people, too, have suffered profoundly. Amnesty International and the European Center for Law and Justice have documented what amounts to ethnic cleansing. Amharas have been murdered in their homes, driven from their land, and stripped of their rights in regions like Oromia. These atrocities are carried out by both state forces and allied militias. Rights Report. Moreover, amid an ongoing and largely underreported war in the Amhara region, while the world's attention is focused elsewhere, grave human rights violations continue to unfold. A recent report by the independent, state-affiliated Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, EHRC, revealed that large numbers of innocent Amhara civilians, with no connection to the conflict, have been brutally killed through heavy artillery shelling and aerial bombardments, primarily carried out by drones operated by the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, ENDF. The report also documented dozens of targeted and extrajudicial killings, as well as cases of rape and conflict-related sexual violence involving members of the ENDF across various parts of the region. An investigation by Human Rights Watch further concluded that the Ethiopian military has committed serious violations of international humanitarian law, acts that may amount to war crimes. My own research has also confirmed these violations. Under Abiy's watch, Amhara professionals, pilots, bankers, telecom employees, have been purged from key national institutions. In Addis Ababa, thousands of Amhara homes have been demolished. Travel restrictions, political repression, and military operations targeting Amhara communities point to a state-sponsored campaign of erasure. Rather than random chaos, this is the deliberate reordering of Ethiopia's political and demographic landscape to favor the Oromo nationalist agenda. Through propaganda, land grabs, and violence, Abiy's government is reshaping the country in ways that exclude and demonize any group that resists its vision. War drums. While the Amhara region remains under siege, tensions with Tigray are once again on the rise. Despite the Pretoria peace agreement signed in 2022 to end hostilities in the north, many fear a new war is imminent. Abiy's actions suggest he views both the Amhara and Tigrayan peoples not as citizens, but as existential threats. Should another war erupt, it will confirm a bleak truth, that this government is not interested in reconciliation or reform. It is a regime that survives by creating internal enemies and deploying state power to silence, crush, and erase them. This is not only a political crisis. It is a human rights emergency. The campaigns against Tigrayans and Amharas meet the criteria for war crimes, crimes against humanity, possibly even genocide, as outlined by international law. Arbitrary detention, targeted killings, forced displacement, and deliberate deprivation of basic services are not just abuses, they are part of a pattern that must be confronted. Silence from the international community is complicity. Ethiopia cannot continue to receive praise or support from global partners while persecuting its own people. Those who prize peace and justice must speak now, because what is unfolding in Ethiopia is not the failure of a reform project. It is the active dismantling of pluralism, dignity, and human rights.